Alright, so I get asked a lot of questions as to how I color with markers to get kind of such a blended effect. So I thought that today I would do a tutorial on how to color with markers. This picture here was colored with a combination of both Copic and Prismacolor markers. And so I'm going to kind of show how I do that. One side note is I do also sometimes use Faber-Castells, but they don't blend quite like the Prismacolor or the Copic marker. Alright, so the first step to coloring with markers normally is I take a pencil drawing and I ink it. So I've gone over all the lines here in ink and I have erased all of the pencil. This is a good base starting picture. Another thing, you can color directly over pencil. However, it gives you a completely different look. This is more for a lined look, kind of cartoony. Alright, so before I start, I always put a piece of paper in between the picture I'm going to be working on and the page below it, mainly because markers bleed, and they will bleed all over the place, and you'll have a big, stupid, ugly mess on the page below, and then you'll have to find out what to do to fix that. Alright, so the basic technique for coloring with marker is you always want to start with your darker colors first when you're in any section, and then work to the lighter colors. And the biggest reason for this is because if you do the opposite, where your lighter color goes down first, you don't really get any blend. So I always put my shadows down first with marker. This is a Copic marker. This is a clay brown, and I am using the brush tip. Now, the nice thing about a lot of these art markers is they have multiple tips, I believe. The other tip here is a wide tip. And you can get kind of the same effect depending on how you lift the marker. So I'm just going to go through and do some shadows here. With hair, you want to always kind of do uneven, wispy strokes to kind of give it that hair appearance. I guess there's not really, it's wispy. Lots of threads and strands and all that fun stuff. So, boop. Wispy, wispy. Shadows. And the nice thing about marker is you can get a lot of really cool effects with marker that you can't with a lot of other mediums, or rather that are more difficult with other mediums. I guess saying that you can't get an effect is putting too many limits on art, because that would be unfair. So just kind of go through shade, shade, shade. I see my marker here is actually dying on me, and I apparently don't have another one of this color. I have another brown, but since this is a shadow color, if you can put in a comparable color, one that it doesn't have to be exact, you can use a comparable color for shades. Like, see, this Prismacolor brown is almost the same shade. And since I'm going to overlay another color over the top, it's not going to be a huge deal that they're different, which is another nice thing. Obviously the shading technique is going to be a little different because I'm using the wide tip of the Prismacolor marker. How embarrassing. I need to get new markers. Boop. So I'm still shading. I probably should have chosen a smaller picture for all of this, but since this is my first tutorial video, and bear with me, the camera is in fact actually strapped to the top of my head. So if the viewing is not as awesome as it could be, that would probably be why. So if you're getting motion sick, I greatly apologize. I try not to move too much. However, if I sneeze, you're all gonna get seriously motion sick. Right, so shade, shade, shade. And Kira's hair here is really curly, so you can add in little things here or there. To make it all fancy-dancy. Almost done with the shadows. Alright. Now, usually for shadows, I try to make them wispy and almost faded in some spots. I think it gives it a more natural appearance. Although my artwork is lined, so I guess natural is relative when it comes to lined art. Getting all sorts of messages over here. And there. Alright, hold on one second, I gotta let my cat in apparently. Come on, Sora! Kitty! You were meowing. There you go. Okay. Good girl. Okay. Now, back to the task at hand. Now, for coloring in an area, you are not helping. One thing to keep in mind with marker is that you need to work fast. Because you ever see the art, if you ever see the marker drawings where there's splotches in a colored area or there's streaks and lines, that is caused by marker drying and then overlaying more of the same color over it. Because anytime you overlay marker that is new marker over old marker, it just makes it darker. Or I guess you can lighten darker marker by using a lighter marker. But regardless, the best way to color with marker is to work in small little circles and overlay what you've already done. And I try not to make my circles any bigger than, you know, the tip of the marker, because you want it to blend together, and those little circles are what causes the blend. And one thing is working fast also prevents those splotches. You really want to work in an area before the marker dries. So I do sections at a time usually. Sometimes it's harder than others. I find the hardest thing to color smoothly when you're doing markers actually is the sky, because it's one big blue splotch, and because of that you end up with sometimes splotches. I try to throw in clouds here and there to try to get rid of that. So you just little circles and lots of I think my cat's gonna come back over and harass me some more. I think she thinks she's helping, but she is not. Right. So that's one section of hair. Continuing on. Now, the one thing that does and will drive any marker artist nuts is if you do make a mistake, sometimes it can be difficult to fix. If your marker bleeds a little into other areas that you haven't colored yet, it's not a huge deal. One thing I usually keep handy, but I'm fresh out, and you can see I'm running out of a lot of supplies, dyeing markers and all that, but I'm fresh out of is a white gel pen, and I usually get the Sakura brand gel pens because I feel like their gel is superior. It's just better. And it overlays and it doesn't absorb the color below it. So you can do highlights and stuff using a white gel pen. I usually use it to do like highlights and eyes, or if my marker has bled into an area I want to be white, I will use the white gel pen over the top to fix that problem. And just small boop circles. Now, one thing too also to keep in mind is that your marker will appear dry. It will appear darker before it dries, and as it dries, it does lighten. So sometimes an area will not appear as awesome as you would like until it dries, and sometimes it will look like you have splotches until the marker dries. You can't judge what you've done for a few seconds, I guess. So, thankfully I'm almost done with this hair, and then I'll get on to some other things, maybe. Now, with some drawings, now I'm just doing a straight red on her. Sometimes I will add multiple layers of hair coloring to get a different, a more, I guess, shaded, more natural, more reflective response. It's not really what I'm going for in this particular drawing, so I figured I would not do that this time. But you can, obviously, you can use as many marker layers as you want. You just start from your darkest, work to your lightest, and I'll kind of show how that works with multiple markers when I'm going to do some gold stuff. And when I do gold, I start off with a brown base, because real gold isn't like, it's not like bright yellow. When I was younger, I used to make all my gold stuff, you know, kind of a yellow, but as I got older, it occurred to me that gold is not actually yellow. It is more of a brown-based thing. So, first and foremost, I go over, boop, here's my brown. Do a little bit of shading. Doesn't have to be perfect because it will all blend together beautifully when I'm done. Alright, so you throw down your brown. Then I use, this is a mustard yellow. And mustard, surprisingly enough, makes a really good gold. Now, if you have room to leave room for highlights, go ahead. If you're working in a small area, just go ahead and fill it in with the mustard and be done with it. On the necklace here, I will be able to leave some space for more color. So that is fill it in. Now, I've left a little bit of white there. I then usually take either a butter yellow, or I have this pale yellow that I like to use. If I have even more room, I will leave some white for some extra reflective, or I'll just take a white gel pen and over the top, boop, and there you have gold. Yay, gold! So it's really kind of fun playing with a lot of this stuff. You can go in. I like to make her lips red. So, ba-dum-bum-bum. And I probably won't force you all to watch me color the entirety of this drawing, because this drawing is probably going to take a while to finish coloring. Now, sometimes there's not enough room to do a lot of shading, so you just kind of color in an area. If you do have room to do shading, by all means, shade away. That's nothing wrong with that. Wrong end. I suppose looking at the ends might help. Fill that in. And now I'm going to do skin tone. I usually use sand for the base of my skin tone. I do all my dark areas first. And of course you do your shadows. And my cat's going to come and help. So that's kind of the base for the skin. Now, sometimes I use, it really depends on what I'm feeling like. I've used a lot of different things. I like the Prismacolor Peach, but it has a very pinky base. So this right here is Skin White, and just go over the top. One thing I will say is that I believe that Copic markers sometimes have more bleed to them than Prismacolors. This also means that they have like super blending power. They are fantastic for blending. In fact, I do have a Copic clear blender that I like to use, but sometimes it gets a little carried away with the bleed. Alright, so there is skin tone, and if you really feel ambitious, you can throw in some pink. That doesn't particularly look very good right now, but I think it's because it looks darker than it should. Sometimes I'll lay the pink under the skin tone. It gives you a different effect. Right, so that's kind of how I do my skin. I mean, it's pretty easy to color with markers once you get the hang of the technique. You can just fill it in. And, I mean, realistically, I'm just using the same technique for skin as I did for the hair, just different colors. You can use your brush tip or your wide tip. Sometimes the brush tip can give you a softer look. Boop. There you go. So essentially, that is that's pretty much how you color with marker. It's the bleed here isn't going to bother me too much because I'm going to just color over the edges. I'm going to color it with another color so it won't even show up. Because as soon as you overlay another marker over the top of that, it will just go away. That's the best part about marker. Well, not the best part, but there's a lot of good parts about marker. There's a lot of different markers out there. The only type of marker I've found that doesn't blend very well would be like kids' water-based markers. Water-based markers are absolute crap. You really want a good alcohol-based. I guess the only exception would be, I think Faber-Castells are water-based, but they're made out of India ink, something like that. Well, regardless, Faber-Castells, they don't really blend like Prismacolors and stuff do, but Crayolas are absolutely crappy for blending. Rose Arts are crappy for blending. I mean, you really gotta... You get a lot of splotches with those because they just dry way too fast. So, anyway, I suppose if anybody has any questions, you can shoot them my way, and I will do my best to answer any questions. Yay, questions. And I guess that's it. So, go marker. I guess one more thing I probably could say is for areas that I want to remain mostly white, I just shade in like a gray or a pale yellow or a pale whatever I want it to be a hint of, and then I just leave the rest of it white like this. I'm just shading in the feather a little bit, but you could use a clear blender over the top to try to blend it whiter, but the results can be iffy. Sometimes it looks really good, and sometimes it is absolutely horrifically ugly. So you just have to experiment with your markers. Don't be afraid to experiment. If you're afraid to ruin a drawing, I would suggest photocopying one, or my all-time favorite way to practice coloring is actually with coloring books. So I don't have to waste my drawings by learning techniques on them and completely screwing them up. So anyway, there you have it. Markers! Yay!